In 2015, a brutal quadruple homicide left the small community of Pendleton, South Carolina, stunned. The amount of violence that occurred in the home, with all the victims being over the age of 58, was unimaginable, as was the fact that a family member discovered the bodies just a few days after Halloween. But as time went on, investigators began to wonder if a long-simmering family feud and greed were the motives behind the murders. That same year, a 1-year-old little girl disappeared from an apartment complex while her mother's boyfriend was supposed to be watching her 2 small children in Pendleton. As stories about that morning slowly began changing, investigators wondered if they had the right timeline for the disappearance. But one thing was clear: an infant child was missing because of child neglect, and likely something much more sinister. There is much to love about North and South Carolina, but the 2 states have also had their fair share of violent and senseless crimes over the years. From murders on the Blue Ridge Parkway, in the heart of big cities or sleepy college towns, and along the coastal waters, some of these stories may be new to you. Some may have happened in your town. Some may involve people that are still missing to this day. But all will leave you remembering to always be vigilant about the people you meet and the places you go. I'm Renee Robertson. Please join me for Missing in the Carolinas. Episode 118. The Murders of Mike and Kathy Scott, Barbara Scott, Violet Taylor, and the Disappearance of Leonna Wright. On the afternoon of November 2, 2015, Amy Velarde left her home on Refuge Road in Pendleton, South Carolina, and went to visit her mom and stepfather, Kathy and Mike Scott, who lived next door with their 2 elderly mothers. The Scotts resided in a double-wide mobile home, and Amy and her husband Ross lived on the same property in a single-wide. Amy entered the home to find a horrifying scene. 58-year-old Mike Scott, 60-year-old Kathy Scott, 80-year-old Barbara Scott, and 82-year-old Violet Taylor had all been murdered. Based on the scene of the crime, the 4 appeared to have eaten a meal together before they were murdered, and there were no signs of forced entry into the home. All 4 victims had been killed with a knife, and gunshots were fired into their bodies after that. Kathy was found in the master bedroom, and Mike, Barbara, and Violet were all in the living area. Investigators theorized Mike had been murdered first, as he would have been the biggest threat, and due to a lack of defensive wounds, he probably had not seen the attack coming. The yard was still decorated for Halloween, and a full bowl of candy sat on a table next to the front door, leading investigators to believe the Scotts had been expecting trick-or-treaters. Based on a text message Mike sent to his boss earlier that day, it appeared the murders may have occurred in the early afternoon or evening hours of October 31st. Pendleton is a small town about 130 miles northwest of Columbia. Mike Scott worked at the South Carolina Department of Transportation in Anderson. He also had a side business and bought gold and other jewelry for cash. Mike was not a fan of banks and preferred to keep cash on hand rather than in a checking or savings account. This was a fact his neighbors, family, and close acquaintances knew. Kathy spent the majority of her time caring for the couple's 2 elderly mothers. The 2 had first met in junior high school, and then Kathy went to another high school, and they didn't see one another for many years. They reconnected after Kathy's first husband passed away. Lieutenant Sheila Cole with the Anderson County Sheriff's Office said they believed the deaths were part of an isolated incident and that there was no danger to the public. It didn't take the department long to realize Kathy's daughter Amy, who discovered the bodies, had a contentious relationship with her mother and stepfather that had erupted into a full-blown feud just a few months before the murders. Amy had been married a few times before and had 2 small children, which Mike and Kathy had a large hand in raising. With Amy and the kids living right behind the Scotts, they had easy access to their grandchildren, and the great-grandmothers also enjoyed having the little ones around. But Amy didn't appreciate her mother and stepfather telling her how to raise her children. She also held a grudge against her mother, as she felt she had made the decision to terminate life support on her father too early after he was injured in a car accident. Amy often went online and posted about emotional abuse in families, having a mother who was a narcissist, and so forth. In July of 2015, Amy and Ross had a huge blowout with the Scotts over the 4th of July, And again, it had to do with the children. Amy refused to let her parents see the kids after that, and they were devastated. Amy's social media posts about her mother grew so vitriolic that her aunt privately messaged her and asked that she please take them down and consider her mother's feelings. Amy and Ross were married about a week before the murders, and Kathy and Mike told family they had apologized to Amy for the fight in July, and she had agreed to let them see the kids again. Amy and Ross told police they had taken the kids to visit Ross's family in Blythewood over Halloween weekend. Their stories about when exactly they'd gotten back home varied on whenever you talked to them. However, cell phone records placed the couple's phones at their residence during the time period the murders would have occurred. Police were also looking closely at Ross Velarde. He had been a Marine and would have received training with the type of knife that was used in the murders. The couple owned a pet grooming business and were well known to be struggling financially. Employees at the business, Styles for Miles, said bill collectors often called the shop, and the landlord complained about not being paid rent. In March of 2023, the Unsolved Mysteries podcast aired an episode on the murders which shed more light on the investigation's findings and what they believed the motive might be. Anderson County investigator Scotty Hill was interviewed for the podcast. Because of the brutal nature in which the 4 people were murdered, with Mike, Barbara, and Violet having their throats slashed, investigators believed it was unlikely one person committed the crime. During the search, police found around $20,000 in cash hidden in a safe in the master bathroom, but nothing else. Mike's sister was interviewed for the podcast, and she said her brother normally kept anywhere between $60,000 to $80,000 in their home. Police found around $60,000 in cash at the Velarde's residence next door in a safe, which they claimed was part of their income from their business. Family members disputed that claim and said it was well known Amy and her husband were having financial difficulties. In late March of 2016, Amy and her husband remodeled the Scott's double wide and moved in. In May of that year, Amy and Ross Velarde sued the Anderson County Sheriff's Office as they sought the return of $100,000 in cash, vehicles, and electronics that were taken from the Velarde and Scott homes as part of the investigation. The lawsuit claimed the Velardes believed the items in question had already been tested and were in danger of being destroyed or lost to the Velardes. This litigation dragged out over several years and included Mike's sister, Pam Isbell. Eventually, Pam was awarded the 2 vehicles, the items taken from the double wide, and $21,400 in cash that had been found in the safe after the murders. Amy and Ross received $34,890 in cash. The Velardes eventually moved to West Columbia, South Carolina, and opened up a mobile dog grooming business there. They occasionally provided complimentary services for the canines of the KC Police Department, according to an article that ran in Fitz News. The television show Cold Justice also covered this case on their show in Season 7, and that is where viewers were able to see all the circumstantial evidence against Amy and Ross Velarde laid out. They examined crime scene photos, reenacted the murder, analyzed social media posts, cell phone data, and text messages between the couple. By analyzing the Velardes' cash flow, they could see that whenever the 2 came into any money, they immediately spent it on vehicles and other luxury items. But yet, they had a problem paying the bills related to their business and their employees. Their phone showed they were on the property the night of the murder. Based on a text exchange between the 2, it sounded like Amy had gone over to the house and called a family meeting, or at least said she wanted to talk to everyone. They were all in the living room together. She texted Ross around 8:36 p.m. "Everybody is up now and talking, ha ha ha. Take my car and grab a 6-pack. Since their kids weren't there, it implied she was talking about her mom, stepfather, and 2 grandmothers. Based on the crime scene reenactment, investigators theorized Amy let Ross into the double wide, and the attack with the knife began. Kathy must have run back to the master bedroom to get a handgun, because an empty holster was found in the bedroom. Investigators theorized either Amy or Ross followed her into the bedroom, disarmed her, and then attacked her with the knife and shot her. Then the perpetrator took the gun back into the living room and fired rounds into the bodies of the other family members, even though the wounds from the knife would have killed them first. A bloody shoe print found at the scene came from an Asics Speedstar sneaker. Surveillance footage of Ross, the night of the murders, buying beer at a local Quick Trip, showed him wearing a pair of Asics sneakers. Those shoes, and the clothing he was wearing in the video, were never found. It doesn't appear any of the murder weapons were ever found either, but one of the couple's former employees said she had seen a large military-style knife in Amy's car at one point. In the days before the murders, Amy and Ross were texting about a bill they owed someone at their dog grooming business in the amount of $7,000. They said they would tell the creditor the bill would be paid after November 2nd. They had access to the cash inside Mike and Kathy's home after that date, and they paid the bill. On November 5th of 2015, days after the murder, Amy sent her husband a text that said, "Hey babe, we need to go ahead and run." Investigators found a social media message Mike had sent to a customer of his that said, "You have money." He included a photo showing 5 $100 bills. Police were able to trace the serial numbers on those bills back to bills found in Amy and Ross's home after the crime. They had said that money was from their pet grooming business. On December 15th, 2023, the Anderson County Sheriff's Office announced they had arrested Amy Velarde, now 40, and her husband, Rossmore Ross Velarde, age 36, and charged them with 4 counts of murder in connection with the deaths. In mid-February of this year, a judge in Anderson County officially denied the couple bond. I'll keep you posted on developments in this case as the trials arise. Before we continue, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. The last thing I want to do this spooky season is look in the mirror and be frightened by the reflection of a tired woman with bags under her eyes. The products from SkinxErin give me the confidence to go throughout my day with clear and healthy-looking skin. I'm a no-frills kind of gal, and that's what I like about their skincare system. Using the Pre-Cleanse Oil, Hydrating Beauty Oil, and Perfecting Night Oil are a real treat for my skin, and my morning and night routines take less than 5 minutes. I love that these products don't leave my skin feeling greasy, and are loaded with squalene oil and vitamins E and A. Plus, they are extremely affordable, and their customer service can't be beat. Go ahead and show your own skin some love with 10% off your order using my code MissingCarolinas10. I'll include a link in the show notes for you. Are you looking to level up your writing or learn a new skill? Whether you focus on nonfiction or more inclined to creative writing, or want to learn how to put together a digital portfolio of your writing, Wow Women on Writing can help. Interested in podcasting? Check out a digital course I created called You Can Start a Podcast. During this pre-recorded webinar, you will learn the benefits of creating your own podcast, materials you need to get started, how to develop content that will keep listeners coming back for more, and ways your podcast can create supplemental income. I'll share examples of different types of podcasts, how to decide on a format, ways to handle the technology necessary for creating a podcast, how to develop your first few episodes, promotion and monetization ideas, and ways you can repurpose your podcast content. All written materials and resources are provided by me. I'll also give you a handout with information discussed in the webinar, along with suggestions for a few different types of podcasts to explore. Best of all, this webinar only costs $30. You can find it by going to wow-womenonwriting.com and clicking on the Classroom tab. I'll post a link in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show. On June 6, 2015, 1-year-old Leonna Wright went missing from the Edgewood Square apartment complex, now called Palmetto Village, in Pendleton, South Carolina. When the Anderson County Sheriff's Office was first contacted, her mother, 23-year-old Kiara Sullivan, and Kiara's boyfriend, 33-year-old Travis Jones, told investigators that the door to their ground floor apartment was open when they woke up around 9:25 a.m. and Leonna was gone. The couple thought Kiara's 3-year-old daughter Ariel might have opened the door, and Leonna had crawled out. After further questioning, more facts came to light. Kiara had gone out the evening before to attend her sister's bachelorette party and left Travis Jones in charge of 1-year-old Leonna and Ariel. Investigators believed Leonna was already missing from the apartment by the time Kiara returned home around 5:30 in the morning. It was also evident Ariel would not have been able to unlock the door by herself. Investigators said they lost 2 days of valuable search time before they came to the conclusion Leonna had been taken from the apartment before Kiara returned home. Travis Jones admitted to using illegal drugs while watching Kiara's children that night and pleaded guilty to a child neglect charge and probation violation just a few months after Leonna went missing. He was sentenced to 3 years at a state prison outside Columbia. Kiara was also charged with child neglect and tested positive for cocaine and marijuana. 3-year-old Ariel had been exposed to methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana. However, when it came to the whereabouts of Leonna, Travis remained tight-lipped. Investigators told the media they had received some disturbing leads, and they diligently tracked each one. They heard that Leonna was murdered and buried at a hog farm, and they said they found no evidence to back up that claim. During the first year she was missing, they also got a tip she had been spotted at a Walmart in Washington state, but again, that didn't pan out. In early May of 2016, the Anderson County Sheriff Captain Garland Major and Deputy Chief Carl Anderson traveled to the prison in Bennettsville, South Carolina, to speak with Travis Jones once again. He did not want to cooperate with their investigation and asked for legal counsel to be present. 5 years after baby Leonna disappeared, in July of 2020, police charged Travis Jones with homicide by child abuse. The arrest warrants claimed he had willfully abandoned and neglected the infant multiple times before she vanished from the apartment complex. His older brother, Donnie Roderick Jones, was also charged with being an accessory to the crime after the little girl's death, and charges included destruction or desecration of human remains. When Leonna went missing, neither Kiara nor Travis were in possession of a vehicle, so police theorized Travis must have had help moving Leonna from the apartment. At the time, Donnie Jones was already incarcerated in Columbia after being convicted of an unrelated charge of methamphetamine distribution. In mid-December of 2021, Anderson County Clerk of Court Richard Shirley announced the murder charges against Travis and Donnie Jones had been dropped. Sheriff McBride released the following statement. On December 15, 2021, the case regarding Leonna Wright was dismissed in a preliminary hearing. Although the magistrate that issued the arrest warrants for the 2 defendants originally found probable cause to charge them, a different magistrate that oversaw the proceeding today found that there was insufficient probable cause to move forward. While I disagree with today's ruling, the Anderson County Sheriff's Office is committed to seeking justice for baby Leonna Wright. Our detectives continue to investigate this incident in hopes to find additional evidence that would lead to the prosecution and conviction of those responsible. When I inherited this case in 2017, I was determined to bring to justice those responsible for baby Leonna. I am thankful for all of the detectives that have been involved in this investigation, and am grateful for all of their hard work, effort, and countless man-hours spent working on this case. I am confident they will continue their relentless pursuit for justice. 8 years after Leonna disappeared, family, community members, and representatives from the Anderson County Sheriff's Office gathered together to honor the young girl. Sheriff Anderson reiterated that he believes he knows exactly what happened to Leonna. He said, "The 2 people we feel are responsible for Leonna's death, we feel they are not the type to keep their mouths shut. I think there are some people out there, I would say at least probably a couple of people, that have information they need to get to us." During the memorial, community members unveiled a bust of Leonna, and June 6th has now been proclaimed as Leonna Wright Day of Awareness in Anderson and Pendleton, South Carolina. Anyone with information on this case can call Crime Stoppers at 1-888-CRIME-SC to leave an anonymous tip. This brings us to the conclusion of this episode of Missing in the Carolinas. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and give it a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you'd also like to support the show in a small way, you can buy me a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com, Renee Robertson. I currently don't receive any compensation for this podcast, so every little bit helps me continue producing new content. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so please like our pages and get started on a discussion of the missing people profiled on the show. Do you know of a missing persons case in North or South Carolina that you think should be covered? Email me at missinginthecarolinas@gmail.com with any details you can share. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Wow Women on Writing, and the great programs and writing contests they have there at wow-womenonwriting.com. Cover art for this podcast was designed by Macintosh Multimedia. All episodes are researched and written by me, Renee Robertson, with sound editing provided by Daniel Robertson. Thanks so much for listening.